Today, 06880, the podcast becomes 06883. It is a pleasure to welcome Sam Nestor, the First Selectwoman of Weston, to the Westport Library stage.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. I really appreciate it.
You found your way down here from the north, okay?
I did. It took a whole 8 minutes.
So speaking of maps, what is the route to becoming the First Selectwoman of Weston?
You know, I was a little bit different. My path to becoming the First Selectwoman, I was asked recently why I gave up my entrepreneurial, spirit. I was running a company out of New York and Connecticut.
What kind of company?
It's a marketing company for creatives. I work with architects, designers, magazines. My background was in publishing for design magazines. And I realized that all of my representatives that were female were either retired or stay-at-home moms, that I didn't see in my representation someone who looked like me, so to speak, as far as the business acumen. And being a working mom is really hard, especially in Weston, because you can be very isolated. And
if you're from home.
I worked from home, and I would commute to New York a couple of days a week. And what happened was I answered an ad that was in the Weston Forum looking for people to volunteer. I had met a former First Selectwoman who had served. I had talked to her because I thought, well, I've never done anything like this before. And I was nominated to run for the Board of Education in 2017. And I won a seat on that board. And I had run with a whole group of newer residents to Weston. And my colleague who made it onto the Board of Selectmen, Brian Gordon, we were elected in the same year. And Brian tragically passed away a year later.
And Brian was a Staples grad.
And he
beloved.
was that guy who made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. And he was also tall and handsome and Jewish, by the way. My mother would have loved him. He had figuratively and literally big shoes to fill, even though he was just there for a year. And I was appointed to fill his position to serve with Chris Spalding, and he was the first selectman. And I served until 2021 as the second selectwoman and won both subsequent elections. In Weston, it's every 2 years, not every 4 years.
Tough.
So, you have to constantly be delivering. And then in 2021, I ran and won with over 70% of the electorate voting me into office. And last year in a three-way race, I won again with 64% of the
Who's
the vote.
The third candidate was what party?
Was actually a Democrat, was my former running mate who
wow.
decided that he would run for First Selectman.
But drama in Weston.
Drama, yeah. It was drama, yeah.
Wow.
But we have been fortunate to have a real bipartisan spirit on our boards. The person I ran against, he was the third selectman with me and Chris, and we got so much done, and we're already, still getting so much done. So, yes, the path was just wanting to see more of me and working parents, and at the end of the day, there are a lot more working parents on the board since 2017.
Wow. And what got you to Weston originally? And when? So
I moved here in 2008, and I closed on my house the day Lehman Brothers fell.
Timing is everything.
I will never forget it. I think it was 2008, right? 2008, yes. And I moved here because I worked at Metropolitan Home Magazine, and I knew that I wanted a mid-century modern house in the woods. And after 2 years of looking, I found it. And we loved it. And I moved here just because I knew the architecture, the inspiration, and we saw the house, and I said, I love it. And my husband, of course, said, we're never going to get it. And then we put in an offer the day in that sweet spot, and it's my dream house.
Did you move from the city?
We temporarily were in Darien in a rental, but essentially, yes.
Okay. Because obviously that's, especially since COVID,
Yes.
that's been the story, people moving from their little cramped apartments into their bigger homes in Westport and Weston.
Yeah, I was a pioneer. I like to say I was an early adapter. We have had 30% turnover here in Weston because the folks who have moved here now, they want the open space. They want a community that's very close-knit. They want these small schools where the entire school system is in the same campus, where you can pick up the phone and you know, people know who you are. And, you know, I like it because it allows me to really get to know everybody. And door knocking is a whole nother thing in Weston. You got to drive everywhere, but you have the opportunity to meet everybody.
Wow. Is it a full-time gig?
You know, I get paid part-time, but it's a full-time gig. And it's a pleasure. I love that I get to keep people safe and make my own community better.
Typical day? Is there such a thing?
Yes, I guess a typical day now. Typical Monday. How about we do a typical Monday?
Today's a Monday.
Typical Monday. Monday, I get to the office around 9:15. The team's been there, and by the team, I mean my executive assistant and our town administrator. We regroup about what's planned for the week. We talk for about 45 minutes. It could be an application due. It could be reports that are due for different grants. We have about $34 million worth of grants that we are either in the process of spending or that we've already spent. And all of that, because it's been in the past 3 years, has an extraordinarily large amount of paperwork and compliance issues. So we usually say, okay, what are the things that are due this week? Then at 10 o'clock, we have a project management meeting with our head of facilities and of DPW and facilities, and our town engineer, and she goes through all of the projects that are currently going on. We finish up usually about 11:30. We all have different jobs to do from that meeting. We leave for that meeting, and that day is spent kind of executing how we're going to do our roles and responsibilities for those projects. And it's very project management driven. That's not to say I don't get emails, I don't get phone calls, people don't show up at my office, all of those things that will happen. But Monday is the day where we plan out our week and we know where we are with every project that is underway. So we don't get behind or over budget.
Big issues? What are the big issues in Weston now?
They're big spaces, big issues. I think right now, one of the big issues that finally has gotten some people's attention is developing our village district. And we changed the ordinance for zoning in Weston to allow for multifamily, commercial, and mixed use from, we call it the Four Corners, corner of School Road to Norfield Road. It's about 20 acres total. It used to be only 8 acres. Now it's expanded significantly.
This is what we know of as Weston Center.
Weston Center, yes, Weston Center. And there is a corner lot that the church had owned that they are trying to sell to a developer who did the Daybreak development here in Weston. And they want to change one line of that code to make the apartments bigger. And it has brought out a lot of feelings from folks who back in the day would wear T-shirts that said, "Keep Weston Rural." And you have 30% new people in. You have people who came in my generation. And we see this type of development as an opportunity for folks to age in place here in Weston. It's very hard to manage a 2-acre lot, you know, when all of your kids are gone and, you know, you're just trying to be a fun empty nester. And allow some commercial, a little shop or whatever. And you've got to start somewhere. And this is that moment that it's starting. And in a couple weeks, planning and zoning will deliberate on whether or not to change this square footage. I forget how big it is for the apartments, just to make it a little bit more affordable.
Sure.
There are people who are concerned about the traffic. That's not a real concern. I think
it's a few.
Yeah, it's just a few more cars. It's not 200 more cars. And I think change is hard. And I think once this starts to happen, people will be more comfortable with it. We also have a huge swath of that property that's owned by the town that we are deliberating on how we are going to do a public-private partnership and develop that. But we want to see how this plays out a little bit first.
Interesting. You've mentioned a couple of times the new people in Weston.
Yeah.
I assume they're like Westport, in their 30s and 40s.
40s. Yeah.
Are they come with, their own backgrounds. Are they changing Weston? Do they want to change Weston?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I did my share of door knocking, thousands of doors in 2023. Just to really meet people and to know where they're at and to listen to them. And the folks who moved in here is not a monolith. We have a lot of empty nesters who moved to a dream home with a lot of property. And this is a compound that their children can come see them. And it's a lot of land and a big house. And some of them even sold in Westport for a song. A lot of money, and they're able to buy a lot more property in Weston at the time. So while we did get a lot of young people, it didn't cause our enrollment to skyrocket. We didn't get a ton of those people, but enough. And I think they're still finding their way, but this group is a little bit more conservative. They are a little bit less into politics. Mm-hmm. They, and I'm overgeneralizing, and they consume information differently. So we are trying very hard to get information to them. They don't read their emails. You could send 1 million emails, but wow. We have things posted on our website.
Instagram.
What?
Gotta go on TikTok.
Yeah. Yes. We do. And we're working on that. And we have, developed some Instagram programs. We have things on Facebook, but Facebook is too old for them. Yeah. So they're not on Facebook. And we have a communications committee that is working on not anything partisan, but just general information. This is what happens when there's a really big storm in Weston and you lose your power, and therefore you don't have any water because you're all connected to wells. Like sure. basic silly stuff like that.
Wow. Accomplishments. What are you really proud of?
I am really proud that we set up a plan. A plan from the Plan of Conservation and Development and huge facilities and infrastructure plan, and we've been able to follow it and get the money for it. My annual, or the town and school's annual capital budget is about $3 million a year, what we spend on capital. Our town's operating budget is only $16 million. So school is $61 million. I was able to bring in $34 million worth of grant money to pay for 4 bridges, to put in the first sidewalks we ever had in Weston, which is kind of a big deal.
It's a very big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal.
Talk to anybody in Weston, they talk about sidewalks.
Yeah, it's a big deal. We got pickleball courts put in. We have the dog park, which I was talking to you about earlier, that we were able to finally build, and it's in memory of Brian, which is just amazing to me. So we were able to do recreational things. We were able to do infrastructure projects and projects that are sustainable. We have a huge sustainability initiative, and we were able to get a grant to put solar panels on our DPW roof, which will then in turn power the whole municipal campus. That's forward thinking, and we were able to do a police locker room reconstruction that would allow for women police officers. And we hired our first female police officer in 25 years about a month ago.
Wow.
So those are some of the big things, but I think the most important to my heart are the community programs I was able to do because we are so separated. And we were able to do holiday programming. We were able to do, I do this thing called Town Hall Talks where people come and it's like the brown bag thing, but it's lunch and, or dinner. And people come and they just find out what's going on. Just those, and I did do a program called Town Hall Happenings, which is an email that we send out every week, whether people read it or not, of everything that goes on. It's not quite, your blog, but it does say what's happening. Sure. And I'm very, very grateful that we did our program with Siversk, Ukraine, especially now.
Today, as we're taping this, is the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It did not happen the other way around.
It did not happen the other way around. And Westport was the first sister city program, and we followed suit with Siversk. And their mayor, I got an email from Marshall. Their mayor is wanting to come to the U.S. in May, and Westonites really stepped up for their
raised a ton of money.
Raised a ton of money. Where we were able to send the displaced children to 4 or 5, I can't remember, different cycles of summer camp. Where they developed social and emotional programs to help them through the conflict. So that's when I say I want to leave the world a better place. That's really meaningful. And my family's background is Ukrainian, so it also has they left in the pogroms, but, they were... they called it Russia back then. Yeah. So big deal. So those are many things, and I'm sure I could try to think of more. But
what keeps you up at night?
Public safety. Weston is pretty isolated. A storm that comes in can knock out power for a whole swath of the community. I've got a lot of new residents that don't really know what to do in a blizzard situation or a blackout situation in the winter when you have water connected to a well and spotty cell phone service. That basic things. That's why we replaced our 911 system with a $4.5 million radio system so that at least our public safety responders could communicate with other towns and with each other in that area. But people being safe. I'm still a mom.
You'll always be a mom.
Yeah.
So Weston has a First Selectwoman.
Yes.
Westport has a First Selectwoman.
Yes.
What do you and Jen Tooker talk? Do you collaborate, commiserate?
We have a commiserate. That's good. She's given me a pep talk once or twice. She is on a 4-year cycle. I'm on a 2-year cycle. So it's a little bit different, but we run concurrently. We are both graduates of the campaign school at Yale. So Patty Russo, who's nonpartisan, and even though we're different parties, we're both graduates, not at the same time. Westport and Weston have a number of regionalization programs, collaborations. We just started collaborating together on a mental health wellness program with Silver Hill. We were doing it with New Canaan. Westport's come on board. And we share the same health district. And we see each other, be it on Zoom or not. We have the WestCog, we're the regionalized council of governments that we are on every month.
Wow. I grew up in Westport,
yes.
And we had misconceptions about Weston. In fact,
have running water. We have running water and electricity.
Running water, right. Mullen hits. In fact, I went to Staples High School. The class above me was the last class with Weston students in it. My class was the first without. Are there misconceptions still in Westport about Weston and vice versa?
That's interesting. I'm just going to say my neighbor who passed away 2 years ago, he was on the Board of Finance that built the high school. So he used to
great
tell me
campus.
so. He used to tell me that. You know, I'm a wrong person to ask because
First Selectwoman.
I think Westport and Weston are perfect sister cities to each other. Sister towns to each other. You want to be a little bit more rural, but you want to still kind of be chic and cosmopolitan. You go to Weston because you have the hiking trails. You're surrounded by trees. You can be as isolated as you want, but you're right here in Westport. And as I said, it took me 8 minutes to get here. So you get all of the benefits of Westport and the community, and you can still sort of move away from the congestion and the traffic. I think the other part, and I should qualify this, my son rose at Saugatuck, and my husband rose there, and my other little son rose there. So I am in Westport so much, and my family's athletic activities are here. So my kids are with kids from Weston, Westport, Fairfield, some from even further north of us, so in Easton. So I think Westport and Weston, the boundaries have blurred. And it's not just physical, but just because of the way social media is, the way your blog is, people are getting their information. There's not this tight border. Although when you do come over here, the taxes are a lot lower because you got a lot of more commercial. So that's true. But you get our mill rate is higher, but you have more property because we don't have the commercial district.
So when you pick up your son here and driving home, you don't, when you cross the western border, you don't say, oh, thank God.
No, and I'm not stopped either. I'm not stopped at the border to show my ID. But I have a good story about my girlfriend who purchased her house in Weston, and she never even realized she was in Weston. She was like, I realized I was Weston, but I kind of thought I was moving to West. She didn't have kids. She was just like, to me, you know, she was from New York where, you know, counties are one big county.
Sure.
So to her, Fairfield County was all one thing. And then she realized, oh, it's separated by municipalities.
So where do you hang out in Weston?
When I am not at town hall,
Right.
I have lunch at the lunchbox. I do, but I also favorite hangout, meet people for lunch is Nomad and Bar Taco here.
Okay.
My husband and I, we love to also eat at the Boathouse. At Saugatuck Boathouse. My son's bar mitzvah is going to be there. Just plug. And I like to go into the city. It's so easy to do. And I don't take the train, I drive. Because I commuted back and forth and drove into the city so often.
And congestion pricing.
You know, I don't go that often. But you know, I heard it was being ended by the king. I thought there is no congestion pricing. But I like to also hike. We live right by Devil's Den. We live right by Trout Brook. Those are easy places to go. And I have 2 dogs. So I put them on the leash at Trout Brook. I can take them on the off-leash place. Once we have the dog park open here in Weston, I can take them there. But I like to do, if I'm not eating, I like to do outdoor activities. That's why we live where we live.
Do you ever go around the corner and say hello to Keith Richards?
I don't. I don't want to get arrested. And I love Le Shot. I should also say we have this amazing...
Talk about Le Shot for people who don't know it.
So Le Shot was once described as the Coachella of Fairfield County. It is this beautiful farm that is a quintessential example of public-private partnership. It was an old farm that was donated to the town. It had a farmhouse and beautiful property. That property was developed by community members to have a community garden. And that community garden was really sort of what fostered everything else that happened at Le Shot. And Le Shot is the home of different concerts, different performances. We were fortunate to have this amazing farmers market that we do throughout the summer. And again, This is run by the Friends of Le Chat. It's not paid for by taxpayer money. It is on town land. And then recently, 2 years ago, it was finished, the Le Chat Offutt Educational Center. And that is an indoor facility that allows us to continue all the amazing outdoor programming and educational programming that we do inside. And it's also really fun. And it has blossomed outside of our community and become a destination for other people to come to Weston to be a part of that. But it's all age groups. It's, our tiniest folks to our people who've lived in town for 60, 70 years.
No, there's a lot of programming there.
Yeah.
It punches above its weight.
Correct.
So what is something about Weston that people really should know about and don't know? What's the hidden gems of Weston?
Oh, I would have said Le Chat. I would have said Le Chat is.
People know about it.
Yeah, I think about the people. They're very well educated folk. There are people who moved from not just the East Coast. We've got a lot of people who came from the West Coast and down south. It is become this haven for people who want to work from anywhere. And we don't have a huge number of folks who commute in anymore. And that used to be a barrier to moving to Weston. And now with the remote work that still people have, and there's a lot of consulting businesses here in Weston, you can have a really nice quality of life and still be close to everything. And still not miss out on anything. I think that's what people don't realize, that by moving to Weston, you're not giving up anything.
And the cell reception is okay.
That's why Wi-Fi exists. Cell reception is getting better. Lions Plain Road, we just had AT&T install a tower, so it's better. Upper Weston by Reading, it's not great.
Yeah, great. What should I have asked that I didn't? Anything about 06883?
You know what? You didn't ask about our schools. One of the big things about our schools is that we are approaching a major school development project. We have been talking about it and going back and forth for about 6 years. And I think in the next year or so, we're finally going to do some major renovation on our middle school and have a big development plan for the rest of the campus. And they haven't done anything like this in 20 years.
Wow.
So it's going to be, it has to be commensurative with the level of education, whatever is done there. And our Board of Finance just finished up some, modeling about affordability and what the Board of Ed can do. But yeah, so stay tuned. That will be kind of the next step in the process.
Great. Sam Nestor, the first Selectwoman of Weston. I've learned a ton. Weston is really, come into its own. I know in the past couple of decades, and between the Lunchbox and Le Chat and Keith Richards and Brian Gordon's park, you've got a lot to be proud of. So thanks for talking about all of it.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for the invitation. I really appreciate it. Keep doing what you do.
My pleasure. And you know how to get home? You know how to get out of here?
I do, if they let me out.
All right. We'll let you out. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You bet.